We are so excited for our second installment of Community and Culture Night. Like we said in the first time we ever did this, the whole goal of this is just to find ways and create spaces and create opportunities for young adults, young professionals to build relationships with each other, to grow with one another. We totally wish that we could be doing this in a coffee shop and we're all hanging out with each other. But unfortunately, you guys know what's going on. So we're just having to do this remotely. We're doing this virtually. Hopefully this is better than another Zoom call because I'm sure you guys have been on way too many to count and getting Zoomed burned out. So we hope that you enjoy this Facebook Live. We're really excited for what we have for you guys today. As always, one of the things we wanted to do as we started Community and Culture Night was to bring interesting people who are doing interesting things, and just to find a way in space that we could just learn from each other, to grow from each other, and that's what we're going to do today. So I have two of my friends with me. You guys should see them on the screen, Adam and Maggie. I know them from different areas of my life, but I'm so excited for them to share a little bit about their story, a little bit about their lives. As you guys are hopping on the chat, please feel free to ask questions. We'll have a question time at the end, probably about 10 or 15 minutes in, is how long each little presentation will be as they share some of their stories and things that they're doing right now. So if you have any questions, drop it in the comment section. We'll be able to see it and hopefully we get some good questions. I know this isn't as great as meeting in a coffee shop, but this is going to do, and we're going to have a great time doing it. So again, thank you guys so much for being a part of it. Adam, Maggie, thank you guys for being a part of this. And so I'm going to kick it off with Maggie. Maggie is a friend of mine since I've worked at Anderson University. She is, well, actually, I'm going to let her introduce herself. A much better job than I can. So without further ado, I'm going to toss it over to Maggie. And Maggie, it is all yours.
All right. Thank you so much, Nee. This has been so exciting to be a part of this. So I am Maggie Platt. I am originally from Carmel, grew up there. My parents were teachers in Carmel, and I went to Carmel High School, went to Anderson University, so it's my alma mater, and I've been back working there for 7 years. But since I know this is kind of a local, mostly local group, I've also worked in churches in Westfield, in Zionsville, in the north side of Indy at Church at the Crossing. And so I've kind of been all over the place in central Indiana. So really excited to be with you. But what we're talking about tonight is my most recent adventure, which is I have a book coming out tomorrow. So you guys are spending my book birthday eve with me, which is really exciting. It is a Christian fantasy novel. It's the first one of a series. My publisher has decided to pick up the whole series. So that's really exciting as well. So when I get asked about the publishing journey, there's three main questions I get asked a lot. One, it's what's it about? The second question is, how did you get a publisher? And the third question is, what inspires your writing? Like, do you have to do anything like listen to music, light candles, like those kind of things? What's your writing process? And the answer to those three questions all are really wrapped together. So I'm just going to take you on thank you, whoever said congrats. I'm going to just take you on a journey with me through the last few years because my life has been a roller coaster, and without my faith in Jesus, I just don't know where I'd be right now. And so let's backtrack to when I was a kid first. I promise I won't take too long on this, but I have been a writer since I was a little girl, but it was just a hobby. I never dreamed it could be something, real in my life. I would lie on my stomach in my bedroom growing up, scribbling in journals, and I actually kept every single idea ever. They're all stuffed in a journal back in the back corner of my office, and some of the ideas are hilarious. So maybe someday I will finish them. But this story started right after college for me. I am 35. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there. So it was 13 years ago. I was working at a church in Zionsville, and the idea just popped into my brain. I was daydreaming, like, what if the fruits of the spirit were embodied in characters over here, and the 7 deadly sins were embodied in characters over here, and they were fighting each other. What would that be like? I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, Wrinkle in Time, Lord of the Rings, like all that. That's kind of my fun world that I live in. And so that's what I started dreaming about, was what would happen. And at first, the first iterations of the story, if I go back to them now, they're pretty lame. All the characters were immortal, and it took me a while to realize books are not interesting when there's no life or death kinds of conflict or worries, when no one can die, so nothing bad can really happen to these characters. And so what the story is now, 13 years later, is totally different from where it started. And over these 13 years, honestly, just the road that I've been on with God has impacted it so much. Going back 5 years, when my roller coaster really started, I was actually diagnosed with cancer in 2015. Melanoma, which is a really dangerous form of skin cancer. So all of you wear your sunscreen and wear hats and long sleeves this summer. And by the time we had found it, it had already spread to my lymph nodes. So it was just a really scary season in my life. And I went through about 2 years of surgeries and immunotherapy as I was battling that, and really blessed to say that I'm great now. In fact, my 5 years will be in September, and then I won't be considered a cancer patient anymore. So that's really, really been huge in my life. But so 2 years of cancer stuff, and we were just elated when that was over. And then another huge blow in my life was a few months later, my mom passed away really suddenly. We didn't have any warning. And so losing my mom, who, is just such a wonderful human being. She was a rock of our faith in our family, just a wonderful legacy for us. So losing her was just huge, and then right on the tail of the cancer journey. So that was just a really rough patch. And as I walked through that with God, just a really dark night of the soul, that comes through in my writing. I think there's suffering in the story as it goes. But then, if you want to go roller coaster, then the way up right after that is I got a new job at Anderson University. I bought a house. And then within a few months, I had a publishing contract. So it has just been wild. The last 5 years, especially in my life, and just holding on to Jesus for dear life through that whole thing. So the story follows a girl named Tovi. And she's around 20. Because remember, I was writing this at first when I was about 22. And she's about 20, and she lives in this wonderful world where they live all up in tree houses, and they're just joyful and fun and live off the land. And there's, this evil, it's a little tropey. So if you're going to judge my book for being tropey, sorry, it's tropey. There's an evil kingdom up on the mountain, and she gets lured there, and she meets these characters that, it doesn't say this in the book, but they embody either deadly sins, or I got a little creative with a few. Didn't really want to write a character based on like gluttony or a character based on sloth. I thought those were kind of boring. So I added in things like bitterness and trying to control people, those kinds of things. I am just going a million miles an hour. So I hope I'm not going too fast. But she encounters these people, we walk through with her what that journey is like as she engages with these different characters, and they impact her life and she impacts theirs. And so I don't want to tell you too much because it comes out tomorrow and you need to read it to know the end. But that's the story, and a lot of my faith journey is in it. The publication journey, I only want to talk a couple more minutes to give time for some questions, but the publication journey for me, it really started at a writers conference where I met some acquisition editors and some publishers from small presses there, and they really gave me some encouraging feedback, and so I just kept trying and kept sending stuff and getting rejections like you always hear about it. And then the magical email came right around New Year's last year, so right in January 2019, where I got an email that just said, we'd be delighted to publish your work. And it didn't feel real. I thought it was a scam at first, because I just couldn't believe it was that, like, just that simple. We would be delighted to publish your work. So here we are about a year and 4 months later, and the book comes out tomorrow. I am all ears for questions if you have any.
Maggie, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
I'm like, your story is fascinating, and I think it's one that, every story is really unique, and so I love that. So as people are kind of asking questions, I guess I'll start. For you, what is the process like for writing? I know everyone has a completely different way they like to write, style, places that they write. What for you? What's that go to?
Yeah. So for me, before I signed a publishing contract, it was such a hobby that it was like when I felt like it. So I would, work on it really hardcore for months sometimes, where it's like I couldn't even sleep just all night. So I'm an Enneagram 4 for those into the Enneagram. So I want my candle, and I want certain music, and I want certain light and flowers and whatnot. And I dress a certain, I wasn't even going to admit this, but I have certain clothes that are my author clothes that make me feel like, and so, but since signing the contract, remember I said it took 13 years to write the first one just because I was on and off again. And I know that I have to be quicker now. And so it's actually become more of a discipline to try and do something for the next book every day, whether that is outlining or writing a scene or delving into a character, so that I'm not taking 13 more years for the sequel.
That's pretty fair. Looks like we got a couple questions. Where can we get the book, and then what's the title of it?
Yes. So this is not very professional, but because I don't have so COVID stole my physical copies. They are sitting in a warehouse somewhere. So I have a printout of the cover for you, Kingdom Above the Cloud. And you can get it right now. It's all online right now. So Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. I'm making sure I have a page on Hometown Reads. If anyone's familiar with that, if you want to read local, you can go to Hometown Reads and look up like Indianapolis, and it'll tell you Indianapolis authors. So I'm working on getting it there. But those are the main retailers right now would be Barnes and Noble and Amazon.
Okay.
All right. Seeing some others. Do you want me to just answer them? Do you want to ask them?
Go for it.
Okay. So the next one I'm seeing is, how do you get inspired when you experience writer's block? So my favorite quote that I've ever seen, and I need to get on a mug, is writer's block when your imaginary friends won't talk to you. And which is totally true. For me, it has become about discipline, which is not a super fun answer. And it's like choosing to work on the book even when I don't feel like it, which again, Enneagram 4, super hard for me because everything is about my feelings. And so some of it is going back and reading old things. Some of it is I will call my pastor. He's huge into fantasy. Like he's a massive Game of Thrones fan and Narnia and Harry Potter. And so I'll call him and start talking about the story, and he'll cheerlead me and like get me back into it. And so it's like bringing other people in, but also just the discipline of keep trudging through when I don't feel like it, which I'm really preaching to myself right now because I haven't felt like it for a while. And I've been using the excuse that the launch is coming up. And so I've been working on that. Oh man. Okay. Let's see. Did the publishers give you helpful feedback when they rejected your work? Yes and no. Some I never even heard back from, which is pretty standard. Some would just send back a short, this isn't fitting into our catalog for next year. Best wishes. And then I'll go a little deeper into the story with this because in fall of 2017, it's easy for me to remember the dates because I was just a month before my mom died. I went to this writing conference and I met this acquisitions editor, and she had told the whole group, She wasn't taking submissions at that time. By the way, for those not in publishing, acquisitions editor, they're the people at a publishing house that like get the new ideas and push them along the line if they're going to fit with that publishing house. But I got up and talked to her because she represented work exactly like what I write. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to at least talk to her. And she said, you know, go ahead and send me your stuff. We're not taking anything on, but I'll give you feedback, which was like gold to have an acquisitions editor say that she would even read my stuff. I sent it to her, didn't hear from her for months. So I thought she'd just forgotten about me, which was fine. And then I got an email back from her that said that she really loved it and she was going to see if I could be added to their publishing house. And a couple months later, then got like the crushing response of, I couldn't get you in, but here's my feedback. So she gave me books that I should read. She told me she told me my strengths, the things I should work on and things that I should really put into my next submission. And the most important part is she like validated and she said, this is good, keep trying. And so that was really great because you just don't get that very often. So I feel very blessed that I got that. So do we have time for more or do you want me to?
Yeah, let's do it. There's a couple more. I'd love to get these answered and then we'll kind of wrap up. This is awesome.
Yeah. Was there a moment when you decided to take your writing from a hobby to a profession? So I'm still in that moment. So I still have my day job. I work at Anderson University with NE. And one of the things that has shocked me in this process, because I knew nothing about marketing or publishing a book, you have to sell thousands and thousands and thousands of copies, like, and not just once. You have to keep that sustained in order to make it an actual full-time profession. I'm single. I don't have like another income in my home. And so I'm going to be keeping my day job for a very long time, most likely. But it's still just such a joy to do this. I've got the spreadsheets and the numbers of like how many I'd have to sell in order to quit my job. You know, let's dream big. It could happen. But going from a hobby to actually submitting the work to publishers was something. I was working at Church at the Crossing in Indianapolis. And this is when I was about 26 or 27. And our head pastor gave us the assignment. He said, you know what, we're going to take this summer and everyone is supposed to pray about what they're supposed to be doing with their life. Like what is next for each of you that God has for you. And as I prayed, it was just really, really like apparent to me from God that I was supposed to work on my writing, not necessarily get it published, but I was supposed to work on my writing. So I quit my job. I moved to Florida and sat like in a Florida library and wrote most of the manuscript of how it is now.
That's unbelievable.
I can't believe I did it. I still can't believe I did that. It was like a total quarter life crisis moment. But I did it. I lived in Florida for about a year. I worked at a travel agency during the day and then went and wrote in this library at a window overlooking palm trees in the evening. So there's that part of my story. So 26, 27 was when that really switched for me. And then we have, wow, it sounds like such an exciting book. When did you know your book was ready to be submitted? I will be honest, I submitted it when it was not ready. I started submitting it around that time when I was like 7, 8 years ago. And I just did not even hear from people, which is such a blow to your pride and whatnot. You know, you kind of live on those stories about like J.K. Rowling being denied this many times before, whatever. But I look back and they weren't ready. I didn't know how to write a proposal. I didn't know how to write a query letter and what publishers were looking for. And that acquisitions editor, it's actually what she really helped me with, not so much my manuscript, but my proposal. And she encouraged me. I have it up on my shelf. I wish I had it down so I could show it to you quickly. But she suggested a book that is just about the Christian writers market. And I read it and I formatted my proposal based on the suggestions in that book. And within a few months, I had a publishing contract. So I don't think it's magic, but the advice was really good.
Yeah.
So
It's funny because I think a lot of people think of publishing and writing a book as like, hey, you just sit down, you write a book, you give it to somebody, they say, oh, this is great, and then they just publish it. And so
yeah.
to know there's so much more that goes alongside of
The marketing side, I like just like unless you get in with one of the big publishers in New York or something. I'm with a small publisher in South Carolina. You do a lot of your own marketing. I had to learn about like scheduling Instagram posts, and I mean, I'd used Instagram because I work with college students, but like I knew nothing about like the right hashtags or the right number of hashtags or scheduling or, all of those things. So marketing and the editing process and all of that were all just completely new for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And well, you picked up a new skill. So, hey, there you go, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Maggie, thank you so much. This was awesome. I wish we had another 45 minutes because there's so many parts of your story that I want to know more about. You up and moving to Florida to pursue your dream. Like there's so much more. Maybe we'll have you record something else just so we can hear a little bit more from you.
I love that. And anybody connect with me online. I'd love to actually meet you who are on the other side. So
yeah. So hey guys, hey, we're a small community, but we're growing. If you have the opportunity, go grab her book. Let's support her in the launch. Thank you so much, Maggie. We really appreciate having you. It has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story. We really appreciate it. Up next, we have Adam Kaps. He's a friend of mine that I've gotten to know over the past few months, and I'm excited for him to share his story as well. So like I said, I'm going to have him introduce himself, but he is doing some exciting things in Fishers and ran a city council race, and I had no idea that people even did that this young and all the things that came along with it. And so I think it's going to be really cool to kind of hear from him and his story and how he decided what he did, and just to learn, at least in our particular area, what does that even look like for us? And so I'm really excited to have him on. So Adam, come on over. We're excited. Please go ahead and share with us who you are, what you're doing, and we'll let you take it from there.
That sounds good, Nee. Thank you.
Absolutely, brother.
Well, as Nee said, my name's Adam Kaps. I live in Fishers with my wife, 2 dogs that I absolutely adore. We've adopted both of them, and they're the biggest babies. If you ever want to see my dogs, just look me up on Instagram or Twitter. They're on there very regularly. But as Nee said, I ran for city council last year at the ripe old age of 29. This is my first time venturing into politics. And I decided city council is a great place to start, not only to learn the ropes of what it means to be a public servant, but also learn the ins and outs of democracy and all of what it takes to run a campaign. And of all things, I decided to try to oust the longest serving city council member in Fishers history, who is going on almost 20 years in office. So I thought, well, that looks like a pretty good race, a good opportunity to get my feet wet, have a good challenge, but also maybe have a race that could be winnable. And I'll give you the spoiler alert at the outset here. I lost by 57 votes. We ran a year-long race from February to November. And of course, as you're running a campaign, there's a lot that goes into it. So I'll just start by telling you a little bit about why I decided to run, and then the 5 things I thought were the most valuable things I learned as a first-time candidate. So the very first thing I always get asked of when people learn that I ran for city council is, why did I run? And at the end of the day, it sounds like a cliche, but I do really love serving others and helping other people. I grew up in a family where my dad has been a 911 dispatcher and a firefighter. My mom and my sister both work in hospitals or have worked in hospitals and healthcare, taking care of others. And then here I am. I work in marketing as a day job, which is a great opportunity to learn business at firsthand and also serve businesses in a different way. But when you think about a more humanitarian, deeper level of serving others, public service, in my opinion, is the greatest way to help others. And so I wanted to find a way to give back to my community. And that started by just looking around at the city that I lived in, try to see what problems existed, if there was even a need for me to run. And that is so important when you decide that you want to run for office, is that you need to have a reason why you run. So when I looked at the things that I learned, and I spent day and night from February to November of 2019 learning day in and day out what it means to be a candidate and how much legwork you truly have to do. And I learned essentially it boils down to 5 different things that you need, that whether you're running for city council or the president of the United States or anywhere in between, even the smallest office, no matter how small, requires time, money, materials, purpose, and people. And I'll start with time because there's a lot of time involved in running for office. When I decided to run for office, I at the time was running my own small business on a small business marketing consultancy. And I eventually was fortunate to be joining a business, an existing business in Fishers that is woman-owned, and it's a really amazing agency to work at. And so I had to very quickly learn to move from an independent role as a consultant to an employee of a business and how to manage my time. When you're a consultant, you get to make your own hours, and it doesn't really matter whether you're up till midnight doing a certain project because you're on your own time and serving your own clients who understand those expectations. When I joined the marketing agency, you have to rethink how you're operating on a day in and day out basis. So when I was running for office, I basically was up at 5 or 6 a.m. every morning and then going to bed at roughly midnight or 1 o'clock. And the reason for that is because there's so much involved up front to start a campaign. So that's the time element alone, is that you're filing paperwork, you're setting up meetings, you're going to events or planning out events you want to attend, you're organizing, you're figuring out how to door knock, of all things, of where you want to connect with voters, where your people are who could possibly help you win in November. All of this planning takes place ahead of the actual visible campaign that you see. So that's just the time element alone. The second component is easily the worst part of politics, is money. You cannot run a campaign without money. And it starts by humbly asking your friends and family to support you with $5, $10, $20 donations, whatever they can give. Because when you're running a city council race, or any race for that matter, you have to learn how to you have to design and print any marketing materials. And this goes back to Maggie's problem. You have to learn how to market very quickly, and you have to design it all and pay for it. And so you set up fundraisers. You have to make phone calls to talk to people and convince them that you're worth investing in. And you have to ask your friends and family however much they can give. It's incredibly helpful that they do. And I ended up raising about $5,000 over the course of 8 months. And that, for me, was enough for me to run a race that I felt was competitive. And I know that there are some city council members that have run races and won races for $2,000. I mean, there's a lot of money that goes into it, but there's a wide range of money that you can raise. If you can raise anything above $5,000, at least at the level in Fishers that I ran, I thought it was enough. If you raise above that, that's more than enough. You can pay for digital ads. You can pay for more marketing materials, direct mailers. All of these things are a part of the campaign, and they all cost money. But that is my least favorite part of running for city council. So the third component is the materials, and I've mentioned that a little bit. But when you start a campaign, there is so much you have to think about, and one of the biggest things is, how are you going to get your message out to the voters? So I started at the cheapest, most cost-effective way is to set up a Facebook account that's an actual professional page, so you can invite people to the message that you want to hear and not specifically with their personal page, and that's free. That costs no money to set up a professional Facebook page or any other social account. The next cheapest thing I set up was a website. I used a website platform called Squarespace, and it cost me $10 a month. And all I needed to do is just make sure that my message was on there and that it looked decent. Then you start getting into the more expensive items of running a campaign, but they're really the most effective. And as I'm sure you can imagine, the more money you spend, the more likely you are to be able to reach your voter. And so I started reaching out and buying I got a couple examples here because when you run a campaign, you have plenty of materials left over. I started going with business cards because they were easy to carry around. It had my name on it. It told people what I was running for, and then it had some contact information here on the back. I don't know if you can see that. There you go. It had some information on the back for people to reach me if they wanted to follow up to talk about issues that they cared about. And that is such an important thing when you run for city council or any race, is that you need to understand what people care about. And so I didn't print any material related to issues for my campaign because I needed to know, as a representative of the voters, what they cared about and whether or not I agreed with them. And so I went for about 3 or 4 months of my campaign after filing all the paperwork in February before I ever printed or spent any money designing or printing a piece of what we call door knocking material, which is something like this. And what this does is this tells people your positions on different policies. It tells people about what you care about, what you're passionate about. And so I started my campaign purely by listening to the voters and understanding what mattered most to them. And then from there, I could take that information and then distill it into I can more wisely invest my money by making sure I'm printing something that I know will have a lasting effect. And of course, you have all the t-shirts and the campaign buttons and digital ads and all these other things that go into a campaign. And it's really exciting to have all this stuff. And it is a bit humbling to some degree because your name is on it. And whatever you put out there, people will remember you for. So you have to be very careful about the information you put out. And so that brings me to really the most important thing I learned on the campaign, which is purpose. When you're running a campaign, the exhaustion and time and money and the amount of effort you're putting into that energy level that you can sustain won't last unless you care about what you're doing. I will say this. I ran for city council in 2019. I served on a couple other campaigns prior to that, and I can tell you, I have not met one person who doesn't care about the issues that they are working for, which is a great feeling and a big reassuring feeling for me when you hear in the news or on the mainstream media that you think people are being really strategic or really clever or trying to deceive you in some way. In my experience, that has not been the case. I have circles in Indianapolis and in Indiana's 5th congressional district, which is Fishers, Carmel, and a little bit further north. And I've not met one disingenuous person. I've been very fortunate that way. And I like to believe that the majority of people in politics do care about what they are working for. And so when I was trying to figure out what I cared about, what was going to keep me getting out of bed every morning, I started by just talking to people, listening to people, and at some points having disagreements. And so you're meeting voters on a daily basis. It's inevitable. You will be challenged. You will be pushed to make a stance on something that you may not be knowledgeable on. And I will say this, it is okay that you don't know something. And people respect that you tell them that you don't know something. That is one of the strongest learning curves, that even though you have purpose, even though you have convictions, if you're unaware or not knowledgeable on a particular issue, just say it and say, I'll learn it and I'll get back to you. People, that earned me probably more votes than me trying to telling people something they wanted to hear. And then the last part that I learned to be the most valuable, and this is the most valuable thing I learned on the city council race, is to have people that you can count on surrounding you. And that means friends, that means family, that means neighbors, that means people in the spheres of the political parties that you are affiliated with who are dedicated, who are willing to give something for nothing. I had a great team surrounding me, and that started with my wife. She was amazing. She was supportive, helped me write speeches and take positions and research, all the things that I didn't have time to do. She offered up her time, and that was so incredible and so valuable. And then I had a great team of people that I knew I could count on outside of my home. My friends and family were incredibly supportive with their dollars. They donated their time to come knock on doors with me every weekend. Nee, who was hosting this show, was one of those people, and I'd never forget that. I think he still has a Kaps for Fishers t-shirt, so I'll expect to be seeing that sometime soon, Nee. But it's an incredible feeling to be surrounded by people who are committed to helping you in the campaign. And there's two reasons people help you. One, they care about or believe what you believe, or they believe in you. And I have different political beliefs than my parents and my grandparents and my grandmother, who is a very strong Republican. And I am a Democrat, just putting it out there. She's a very strong Republican. She was the very first person to donate to my campaign. She gave me a check for $35, wrote me a handwritten note, and said there's still time to change. And it was, I still have that card. It's one of the greatest memories that I have on the campaign, is that people believe in other people. They don't believe in parties. And that is such a great takeaway for me. And it was so grateful. I was so grateful to be surrounded by so many people who helped. And I'll wrap up here, Nee, so if we want to start taking some questions. But if you ever want to get involved, listen to your community and make an effort to make it better.
Adam, thank you so much. This was, I know you, so I know how structured you are, but that was so clear and so succinct of like, hey, like this is what it looks like. As questions start coming in, I kind of start. One of the things I loved you talk about was purpose, right? And I think for a lot of us, we have purpose, and maybe there are things in our lives that we're wanting, we're not sure how. For you, was there like a catalyst for you that you were like, this is the moment where it's like, I'm not going to about doing it, but I'm actually going to step in and like invest time, the money, the effort into doing it?
Yeah. So I can't tell you there was a light bulb that went off in an exact moment, but I will say as a resident of Fishers, I'm a homeowner. My wife and I just have a very small home in Fishers, not the rich, wealthy part of Fishers. But there is a big discrepancy in the way that development happens in Fishers. And for me, that was a big turning point. I bought a home in a city. I've owned this home since 2016. And in the last 3 years, even if you don't know Fishers very well, I can tell you that it started and was a small town just 3 years ago, and now it's this bustling metropolis that is, I think, the third or fourth largest city in Indiana, and it has over 100,000 people, and that's great. It's great for tax revenue and all these other things that you think about with municipal government, but at the same time, my home is now going to be overshadowed. You can see the backyard of my home with the new 6-story building they're building at 116th Street. And so it felt like it was outpacing itself. It was trying to grow too fast. It was raising taxes on people who didn't need to have taxes raised, because not everyone in Fishers makes $200,000, $300,000 in a household each year, or even more. I mean, there are people who are just working class people, and they like to have a nice city that isn't overcrowded or overpacked. So for me, just seeing all the things, all the small businesses that were being closed is what kind of catapulted me into saying, yeah, I got to do something, because as a Democrat, there was no Republican there was no Democratic representation on the city council. It was a one-party rule, which even if you're a Republican, you can agree that that's bad for democracy if you don't have a diverse voice on the city council.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that, because I think there's a lot of people who are like wanting to maybe start something or do something, and they just are trying to figure out what is going to be the thing that launches them. So I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. Looks like we have some questions. What is the most impactful thing you learned through your campaign?
Most impactful thing. I would say the most impactful thing is I had a woman that I remember, a woman I was door. When you go and you do a city council race or any race, you get especially as you get close to the election, you have to door knock and meet people at their doorstep. And a lot of people hate that because people don't like answering their door. But there are some people who truly appreciate the fact that you took the time to reach out to them on a personal level. And there's tools that you can use to help keep track of who you talk to and the issues that they care about. And I met this woman over off of Eller Road, about Eller and 106th Street. There's a neighborhood there. And she had mentioned that quite literally 2 days ago, a gun had been fired across it was a little distant, but it was close enough for her to feel uncomfortable. And so she talked to the sheriff, talked to the police, and they said, yeah, we can't, there's no way for us to track that. We can't do anything about it. And so when I was sitting there talking to her at her door, she was telling me about this, and it sort of was a light bulb in some ways, is that she's looking at me expecting me to do something about it. And of course, me having no government experience and no real pull in the city government at all, but she's looking to me as someone who can fix the problem that she has found. And that's incredibly humbling. When, I mean, I felt the entire weight of the world just hit me, even though it was so small, no one got hurt. There was no, it was just a gun firing. It made her uncomfortable. But when someone looks at you and says, how are you going to fix this? And they ask you directly, and you're the person who's supposed to answer it, that's a very humbling moment.
It also makes you almost like you're going to dig even deeper, right? Because you got to figure out how to find the answer and what you need to do for it.
Right. So that's the next step, right? You leave the door, you're like, okay, this woman just told me a problem that you have. I'm the candidate. And even if I'm not the candidate, if I'm the actual elected official, it's my job to make sure that I'm representing the people in the city. So you got to do the homework.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got some other good questions I want to make sure we get through too. Are you planning on running again?
I will make that decision when it's time for me to make that decision. I would like to run. I loved running. I loved running. I'm a huge people person. My wife is an introvert. It's literally the thing she hates the most is having to interact with too many people at once. I really love doing it, and I sort of wear it as a badge of honor. There will be a time. I have 4 years from this past January before the next election. I will probably make a decision before then, but I will say it's a lot of time. It's a lot of effort, and I can tell you there were plenty of dishes that I didn't do that I definitely need to make up for in the next 3 years before I make that decision.
Kayla's listening very closely. At the local level of politics, how much interaction do you have with your opponents? Are there debates, town halls, things like that?
Yes. So there is, at least at the city council in Fishers, there was one debate that I did. Kayla just yelled from the other room that she's listening. There is. I participated in one debate. It was hosted by the League of Women Voters, which is a historical society that helps foster democratic spirit. So they hosted it. It was at the city hall, and if you really look hard enough, you can find it on YouTube. You can see me sitting next to my opponent. And so there was a lot of prep that went into that, understanding every level of municipal finance, how to there's all these different issues that you need to understand. So there's a lot of prep, a lot of work. So if you want to see me pummel my opponent, which I humbly think I did, you can find me on YouTube.
I love that. Were there any specific things? Let me see this. Was there anything specific you took away from the experience of running for city council that's continued to help you today in your current career or even daily life?
Yes. On the spot, being able to respond in a way that is succinct and thoughtful. That is, I'm a very long-winded person. Kayla will attest to that. I'm sure many people who are watching and my friends will attest to that. Learning how to give an elevator pitch, every single door, and when you're door knocking, you're literally walking door to door to door, meeting people, and you don't have all that much time. So when you can't spend all day talking to one person, so learning to be quick, succinct, and informative.
I love that. Well, it looks like no more questions are rolling in, so I'm going to ask this one last question before we wrap up.
Sure.
As a young professional in the area, I moved here 3 years ago, and I know there are a lot of young adults in the area that maybe are coming. They graduated from other areas and are coming to Indy and are kind of transplants here. Some and maybe grown up in the area, but local politics is something that everybody knows about, but no one really knows where to go or what's really happening. And so, every once in a while I'll see something pop up on Facebook. The people don't really watch the local news like they used to anymore. And right. So for those who maybe are listening, where do you get more information? How do you even participate or discover where town hall meetings are found? You need to go to get more involved.
That is a great question, and that is easily the biggest barrier of getting young people involved in politics. I found my way through I think I spent 2 or 3 years just trying to get involved in the Democratic Party so I can meet people, so I can learn the answers to those questions. But I'll just give it to you now. The county election office is where you get all of your information. It's public knowledge. In Hamilton County, it's in Noblesville at the courthouse. It's in the town square down the street from Rosie's Cafe. In Marion County, it's downtown in the city county building. If you want to get involved or participate, at least as a candidate, you stop by that office, you find out when the filing dates are. There's a little bit of paperwork, but it's not overly exhaustive. And that's how you can declare a candidacy. If you're looking to just get involved and just want to talk to someone in politics on a regular basis, reach out to me. I'm happy to be a lifeline for people if they want to get involved. Otherwise, there's tons of events throughout the city on both parties. So just look on social media.
Awesome. Well, hey, Adam, thank you so much. Rosie's is literally one of the best breakfast places. Come on now.
Agreed.
Adam, thank you so much, man, for your insight. I love the diversity that today, tonight kind of brought. I loved hearing the behind the scenes of what does it look like to actually run. The amount of, I saw like just a glimpse of the things that you were doing, but to hear the money, the time, the resources you put in, and to be so close to, I know to winning, I'm sure it's frustrating, but also really validating to know that like, hey, that you can make a difference, that your voice is being heard, and that I think for all of us who are listening, that no matter what that purpose is or what that dream is, that you can step up and do something. It doesn't always mean that it's going to end the way you want it, but there's still incredible things that come on the other side, right? And so I think that's a really cool thing that you got to share with us today. I really appreciate you having time and being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much for being a part of Community and Culture Night. We will announce when our next session is. We're going to usually, until everything kind of blows up, we're going to try to do 2 a month. So the next one will be early in May, so be on the lookout for that. We'll drop Adam and Maggie's Instagram so you can go check them out. Feel free to reach out to them if you have any more questions, thoughts, anything like that. If you haven't already, invite a couple friends to this group, especially if they're young adults, young professionals, college students in the Indianapolis, Fishers, Noblesville, Carmel area. We'd love to continue to connect and build. We cannot wait until we all get together and meet up. But for now, we're going to make it happen like this. So invite your friends, let people know. But again, thank you guys so much. We're really excited for what's to come, and hopefully we continue to build relationships and learn from really interesting people. So we're going to go ahead and end. If you guys have any questions, let us know. Make sure to like our Facebook group or be a part of our Facebook group and like our Instagram page, right? Take care, guys. Appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon.